Jake stood at the landing site as the silver alien ship touched down in the desert. The morning sun made the ship's surface look like liquid metal. His hands were shaking, but he tried to hide it. Colonel Davis and Lisa stood beside him, both, looking worried. "You don't have to do this," Lisa said for the 10th time. "Yes, I do," Jake replied. He carried a small bag with some clothes and a few personal items. Hidden in the bottom of the bag was a tiny camera and recording device that the military had given him. The alien ship opened without making any sound. A ramp extended from the opening, and Harvester Prime walked down it. Up close, the alien was even more frightening than on television. It was 9 feet tall, with skin that looked like black glass. Its 4 arms moved in perfect coordination, and its red eyes seemed to look right through Jake. "Jake Morrison," the alien said in its deep voice, "you have made the wise choice. Your species will benefit from your cooperation." Jake nodded, not trusting himself to speak. He walked up the ramp and into the alien ship. The last thing he saw of Earth was Lisa wiping tears from her eyes. Inside the ship, Jake felt like he was walking through a living creature. The walls were not made of metal or plastic. They looked like they were growing, with veins of light, running through them like blood vessels. The air smelled strange, like flowers and electricity mixed together. Harvester Prime led Jake through long corridors. Through transparent walls, Jake could see enormous rooms filled with different environments. In one room, he saw a jungle with creatures that looked like flying snakes. In another, there was a frozen landscape with beings made of ice and crystal. Each species requires different conditions to thrive, Harvester Prime explained as they walked. "We have collected life forms from over 300 worlds. All live in harmony aboard our vessels." They stopped at a section that looked familiar to Jake. Through the transparent wall, he could see grass, trees, and a blue sky that looked exactly like Earth's sky. But he knew it was artificial. "This is where your species will live," Harvester Prime said. "We have recreated Earth's environment perfectly. The humans we have collected are already adapting well." Jake pressed his face against the wall and looked inside. He could see people walking around in what looked like a normal park. Children were playing on swings. Adults sat on benches talking. It looked peaceful, but something was wrong. The people moved too slowly, like they were sleepy or drugged. "They seem calm," Jake said carefully. "We use a mild neural adjustment to help new arrivals adapt," Harvester Prime explained. "It removes fear and aggression, makes the transition easier for everyone." Jake felt cold. The aliens were not just keeping humans like farm animals, they were drugging them to make them easier to control. Harvester Prime led Jake to a smaller room filled with strange machines and screens. "This is where you will work," the alien said. "You will help us improve the human habitat. Your engineering skills will ensure that your species remains healthy and productive." Jake sat down at one of the machines. The controls were unlike anything he had ever seen, but somehow he understood how to use them. Images appeared on the screen showing the human living area from different angles. "How do these controls work?" Jake asked. "The ship's bio-neural network interfaces directly with your thoughts," Harvester Prime replied. "It learns from your mind and adapts to your needs. Very efficient." Over the next several days, Jake learned more about the alien ship than he had ever wanted to know. The entire vessel was alive in a way. It was part machine, part living creature. The bio-neural network was like a giant brain that controlled everything from the air temperature to the artificial gravity. Jake also met other beings who had been given similar jobs to his. There was Zixtal, a creature that looked like a walking tree from a world called Verdania. Zixtal had been collected 30 years ago and now helped design habitats for plant-based life forms. "At first I was angry," Zixtal told Jake during one of their conversations. "I wanted to return to my forest home, but the Kethar showed me the truth. My world was dying from disease. My people would have been extinct within 50 years. Here, Samples of my species will live forever. Jake also met Dr. Karen Wells, a human biologist who had been taken from a research station in Antarctica 5 days earlier. Unlike the other humans in the habitat, she had not been given the neural adjustment drug. The aliens wanted her mind to remain sharp so she could help with biological research. "They're not evil," Karen told Jake during a quiet moment. "They genuinely believe they're saving us, but they don't understand what they're taking away." "What do you mean?" Jake asked. Karen pointed to the screen showing the human habitat. "Look at them. They're safe, fed, and comfortable, but they're not really living. They don't struggle. They don't create. They don't grow. They're just existing." Jake studied the images more carefully. Karen was right. The humans in the habitat were going through the motions of life, but there was no spark in their eyes, no passion or curiosity. They were like living dolls. As the days passed, Jake began to understand the alien ship's systems better. The bio-neural network was incredibly advanced, but it had limitations. It could only process concepts that fit into the Kethar way of thinking. To them, the universe was divided into two types of beings, those who harvested and those who were harvested. Predators and prey, farmers and livestock. The network had never encountered a species that refused to accept this natural order. Jake began to form a plan. It was dangerous and probably impossible, but it was the only chance he could see. He would need to be very careful. If the aliens discovered what he was really doing, they would either kill him or drug him like the others. But first, he needed to learn more about how the bio-neural network worked, and he needed to find a way to contact the resistance movements that were forming on Earth. Late at night, when the ship was quiet, Jake would sit at his workstation and pretend to work on habitat improvements. But really, he was studying the ship's systems, looking for weaknesses. He thought about his farm in Montana, about the simple life he had wanted. It seemed like a dream from another lifetime. But maybe if his plan worked, other people would get the chance to live simple, quiet lives. Maybe children would grow up free instead of in artificial environments designed by alien farmers. It was a slim hope, but it was all he had. 3 weeks after Jake arrived on the ship, something unexpected happened. The bio-neural network began showing signs of confusion. Jake noticed it first when the artificial weather in the human habitat started changing randomly. 1 hour it was sunny, the next it was snowing, then raining. "The system is having difficulty processing human behavioral patterns," Harvester Prime told Jake during their daily meeting. "Your species is more unpredictable than we anticipated." Jake tried to hide his excitement. This was exactly what he had been hoping for. While pretending to work on habitat improvements, he had been secretly introducing small changes to the human living areas. Nothing obvious that would get him caught, but enough to encourage natural human behavior. He had added tools to the workshops that could be used for more than their intended purpose. He had designed gathering areas that naturally encouraged people to form groups and talk. Most importantly, he had found a way to slowly reduce the neural adjustment drug that kept the humans passive. "What kind of behavioral patterns?" Jake asked innocently. "They are forming organized groups. They are modifying their living spaces without permission. Some are even attempting to access restricted areas of the habitat," Harvester Prime replied. "This has never happened with previous species." Jake knew exactly what was happening. As the drug wore off, the humans were starting to act like humans again. They were getting curious, creative, and rebellious. The bio-neural network, which was designed to manage docile livestock, could not understand why its animals were refusing to behave properly. Meanwhile, Jake had been secretly communicating with Earth. He had discovered that the ship's communication systems worked both ways. While the aliens monitored signals going to Earth, they were not watching for signals coming from Earth. Jake had modified his workstation to receive hidden messages from Colonel Davis and the resistance groups that were forming in cities around the world. The news from Earth was both good and bad. The good news was that people were not giving up. In every city where alien ships hovered, humans were organizing, planning, and preparing to fight back. The bad news was that conventional weapons seemed useless against the alien technology. But Jake had learned something important from studying the bio-neural network. The aliens' greatest strength was also their greatest weakness. Their technology was so advanced that it relied completely on their understanding of natural order. They had never needed to design defenses against prey that fought back intelligently. Dr. Karen Wells had become Jake's secret partner in the resistance effort. As a biologist, she understood how the neural adjustment drug worked and had been helping Jake reduce its effects without the aliens noticing. The drug suppresses the part of the human brain that handles complex planning and emotional responses, she explained to Jake one evening as they pretended to review habitat data. But if we reduce it gradually, the subjects regain these abilities, slowly enough that the monitoring systems don't detect sudden changes. Jake nodded. How many humans are now drug-free? About 40% of the current population. Maybe 300 people out of 750. That was enough to start the next phase of Jake's plan. He had been studying the ship's bio-neural network for weeks, and he had discovered something amazing. The network was not just a computer. It was actually connected to the Kethar collective consciousness. Every thought, every decision, every piece of information was shared among all the alien ships in their fleet. If Jake could introduce the right kind of information into this network, it would spread to every Kethar ship in the galaxy. He could teach their entire species something they had never learned, that some prey refuse to be prey. The opportunity came when Harvester Prime asked Jake to interface directly with the bio-neural network to solve a growing problem. The humans in the ED habitat were becoming increasingly difficult to manage. They had started working together to disable monitoring devices, modify their living spaces, and even attempt to break into other sections of the ship. "We may need to increase the neural adjustment dosage," Harvester Prime said. "But first, we want you to study the human behavioral patterns directly through the network interface. Perhaps you can suggest modifications to reduce their resistance." Jake agreed, trying to keep his voice steady. This was exactly what he had been hoping for. A direct connection to the bio-neural network would give him access to the Kethar collective consciousness. The interface process was unlike anything Jake had ever experienced. He lay on a table while thin cables connected to his head and spine. When the connection activated, he felt his consciousness expand beyond his own mind. Suddenly, he could feel the thoughts and memories of the bio-neural network. He saw the history of the Kethar, their travels between stars, their collection of hundreds of species over thousands of years. He felt their genuine belief that they were saving life in the universe by preserving it in controlled environments. But he also felt their confusion about humans. The network had detailed records of every species they had ever collected, but humans were acting unlike any of them. Other species had either fought briefly and then submitted, or had been naturally docile. Humans were the first to organize, sustained resistance while in captivity. Jake began carefully introducing human memories into the network. He shared memories of human history, the American Revolution, the Underground Railroad, the resistance movements of World War II. He showed the network what humans did when faced with impossible odds. The bio-neural network tried to process these concepts, but they did not fit into its understanding of natural order. Prey animals were supposed to accept their fate when captured by superior predators. They were not supposed to organize, plan, and fight back generation after generation. As Jake fed more human memories into the network, he felt it beginning to malfunction. Error cascades spread through the system as it tried to reconcile the idea of willing sacrifice with its programmed understanding of survival instincts. On Earth, Colonel Davis was coordinating a desperate backup plan. If Jake could not disable the alien ships from within, Earth's military forces would attempt a coordinated attack on all the ships simultaneously. They knew it would probably fail, but they refused to surrender without a fight. Jake felt the network convulse as it processed a memory of a human soldier throwing himself on a grenade to save his friends. The concept of deliberate self-sacrifice for others was causing critical errors in the alien consciousness. Jake Morrison. Harvester Prime's voice came through the interface, sounding strained. "What are you doing to the network?" Jake smiled, even though he knew his friends could not see him. "I'm teaching it what it means to be human." The bio-neural network was screaming. Jake could feel its pain as millions of alien minds across the galaxy tried to process concepts they had never encountered before. The idea that prey could choose to fight, could choose to die rather than submit, was breaking their understanding of how the universe worked. Through the interface connection, Jake felt the panic spreading through the Kethar fleet. Ships thousands of light-years away were experiencing system failures as their bio-neural networks crashed trying to understand human defiance. "Disconnect him immediately," Harvester Prime ordered. But it was too late. Jake had opened a pathway between human consciousness and the alien collective mind, and the connection was now beyond their control. Jake pushed deeper into the network, sharing more human memories. He showed them the story of Spartacus, who led a slave rebellion knowing he would probably die. He shared the memory of the passengers on Flight 93, who crashed their plane rather than let terrorists use it as a weapon. He showed them countless examples of humans who chose death over surrender. The ship around them began to shake. Emergency lights flashed as the bio-neural network struggled to maintain basic functions. Through the chaos, Jake heard Harvester Prime shouting orders to other aliens, but their responses were confused and panicked. "The network is rejecting fundamental programming," one alien reported. "All collection protocols are failing. The system cannot process the concept of willing self-sacrifice." Jake felt the network trying to disconnect from him, but he held on. He had one more memory to share, the most important one. He thought about his own choice to come aboard the ship knowing he might never see Earth again. He thought about his dream of a quiet farm in Montana and how he had given up that dream to save his species. The bio-neural network convulsed as it tried to understand Jake's sacrifice. Here was a being who had voluntarily entered captivity, not because he was defeated, but because he chose to protect others. It was the opposite of everything the Kethar believed about prey behavior. Across the ship, the humans in the habitat felt the neural adjustment drugs completely stop working. For the first time in weeks, their minds were completely clear. They looked around at their artificial prison and realized what had happened to them. Instead of panicking, they began to organize. Dr. Karen Wells took charge of the awakened humans. "Everyone listen to me," she announced in the central area of the habitat. "We are prisoners on an alien ship, but we are not helpless. Jake Morrison is fighting for us right now, and we need to help him." The humans quickly formed teams. Some worked on breaking into the ship's systems using the tools Jake had secretly provided. Others focused on caring for the humans who were still partly affected by the drugs. A few of the stronger individuals began planning how to reach other parts of the ship. Meanwhile, on Earth, Colonel Davis received an urgent message from his communications team. "Sir, we're receiving massive amounts of data from the alien ships. It looks like their systems are failing worldwide." Around the planet, the giant alien ships that had been hovering over cities for weeks began to behave erratically. Some moved in random patterns. Others simply hung motionless while their lights flickered on and off. Back on the ship, Jake felt his consciousness expanding beyond anything he had ever experienced. He was connected not just to this ship's bio-neural network, but to the entire Kethar collective consciousness. He could feel alien minds on distant worlds, all struggling to understand the human concept of chosen sacrifice. But the strain was enormous. Jake's human brain was not designed to handle this level of consciousness expansion. He could feel himself burning out, like a light bulb with too much electricity running through it. "Jake," Dr. Karen's voice reached him through the ship's communication system. We've broken into the habitat controls. We can get you out of there." Jake tried to respond, but he could barely remember how to speak. His consciousness was scattered across thousands of alien ships, teaching each one that the universe was not divided into simple categories of predator and prey. Through the network, he felt the Kethar leadership making a desperate decision. They were ordering all ships to retreat from Earth and abandon the collection mission. The human memories had infected their entire collective consciousness, and they needed time to understand what had happened. Harvester Prime appeared beside Jake's interface table, its red eyes flickering with confusion. "What have you done to us?" it asked. Jake managed to focus enough to speak. "I taught you that some things are worth more than survival." "This is impossible," Harvester Prime said. "All life seeks to preserve itself. It is the fundamental law." "Not human life," Jake whispered. "Sometimes we choose to die so others can live free." The alien ship began to pull away from Earth. Through the network connection, Jake felt similar movements from all the Kethar vessels around the planet. They were retreating, but not because they had been defeated in battle. They were retreating because their fundamental understanding of life had been shattered. As the ship moved away from Earth, Jake felt his connection to the bio-neural network beginning to fade. His consciousness snapped back into his own body, but the damage was done. He had pushed his human brain far beyond its limits. Dr. Karen and several other humans reached the interface chamber and found Jake lying motionless on the table. His eyes were open, but he seemed to be looking at something far away. "Jake, can you hear me?" Karen asked. Jake smiled weakly. "I can see it," he whispered. "See what?" "My farm in Montana. There's a small house with a porch. I'm sitting in a rocking chair, watching the sunset over the mountains. There are chickens in the yard and tomatoes growing in the garden." Karen checked his vital signs. His body was shutting down from the neural stress, but somehow he seemed peaceful. "I never wanted to leave," Jake continued. "All I ever wanted was a quiet place to call home. But sometimes you have to leave home to make sure home stays free." As the alien ship disappeared into deep space, Jake closed his eyes and dreamed of Montana. On Earth below, people emerged from their hiding places and looked up at the clear sky. The alien ships were gone, and they would not return. Years later, when Earth developed its own space travel technology, they found Jake's body in a place of honor aboard a drifting Kethar ship. The aliens had preserved him perfectly, not as a trophy, but as a reminder of the day their understanding of the universe changed forever. They also found his final message, recorded in the ship's systems. "I showed them that some of us will never be livestock. I hope that's enough to keep you all free." It was. Jake spent the next 3 days in an underground military bunker 50 miles from the communications array. The world above was in chaos. The alien ships had not attacked any cities, but they had not left either. They just hung in the sky like dark clouds that never moved. Every few hours, smaller ships would come down from the big ones. These smaller ships looked like silver drops of water, but they were the size of school buses. They would land in public places like parks or shopping centers. The aliens inside would come out and scan people with blue lights. Jake watched the news reports on the television in his small room. The aliens looked like giant insects that walked on 2 legs. They were taller than humans, with 4 arms and skin that looked like black metal. Their faces had large red eyes and no mouth that anyone could see. But somehow, they could speak perfect English. The strangest part was what they were doing to people. They were not hurting anyone. Instead, they would point their scanning devices at different people and then take some of them onto their ships. The people went willingly like they were in a dream. "It doesn't make sense," Lisa said during one of their meetings. She had been studying all the reports from around the world. "They're taking people, but there's no pattern. Yesterday in Chicago, they took a bus driver, a little girl, and a man who sells hot dogs. In Paris, they took a famous artist and a woman who cleans offices. Colonel Davis spread photographs across the table. Each photo showed a different alien landing site. We've counted over 2,000 people taken so far, all different ages, jobs, and backgrounds. We can't figure out what they want. Jake studied the photos. Something about the aliens bothered him, but he could not put his finger on what it was. They moved like they were very sure of themselves, like they had done this many times before. On the fourth day, everything changed. Jake was eating breakfast in the bunker cafeteria when all the televisions switched to the same image. It was the inside of one of the alien ships. A tall alien stood in what looked like a room made of growing plants and strange machines. "Greetings," the alien said. Its voice was deep and calm, like a grandfather talking to children. "I am Harvester Prime, leader of this collection mission. I wish to speak directly to the human Jake Morrison." Jake almost choked on his cereal. Around him, everyone in the cafeteria turned to stare at him. The alien continued. "Jake Morrison, you have been selected for your exceptional abilities. We have been watching your species for 50 of your years. Your mind works in ways that will be useful to us. We invite you to join us willingly." The television screen changed to show the interior of the alien ship. It was huge inside, with sections that looked like different environments. Jake could see what looked like forests, deserts, and even oceans. And in each environment, there were different types of creatures. "We are the Kethar," Harvester Prime explained. "We travel between stars to collect the most promising examples of life from each world. These beings live with us in perfect environments designed for their needs. They are safe, fed, and cared for. In return, they serve the greater galactic community." Jake felt sick to his stomach. The alien was talking about the kidnapped humans like they were animals in a zoo. "Your species shows great potential," the alien continued. "But you also show signs of self-destruction. We have seen this pattern on many worlds. We offer salvation. Those we collect will survive and prosper. Those we leave behind will eventually destroy themselves." The screen showed images of other worlds, other species. Jake saw creatures that looked like dolphins with arms, beings made of living crystal, and things he could not even describe. All of them lived in the same kind of artificial environments on the alien ships. "Jake Morrison," Harvester Prime said, "you will help us design optimal living conditions for your species. You will ensure that humans are comfortable and productive in their new lives. This is an honor. Few beings are given this choice." Colonel Davis grabbed Jake's arm. "Don't even think about it," he whispered. But Jake was thinking. He was thinking about all the people who had been taken. He was thinking about his sister in Denver and whether she was safe. Most of all, he was thinking about what the alien had said about humans destroying themselves. That afternoon, Jake requested a private meeting with Colonel Davis and Lisa. They met in a small conference room deep in the bunker. "They're not invaders," Jake said quietly. "They're farmers." Lisa looked confused. "What do you mean?" "Think about it. They take a few individuals from each species, not armies or populations. They keep them in artificial environments, they provide food and care. It's farming on a massive scale. We're livestock to them." Colonel Davis shook his head. "That's impossible. They're obviously intelligent beings. Surely they understand that we're intelligent too." "They understand," Jake said. "They just don't care. A cow is intelligent compared to grass, but we still eat cows. To them, we're just another species to be managed and used." The room was quiet for a long moment. Then Lisa asked, "What are you thinking, Jake?" Jake stood up and walked to the small window. Through the thick glass, he could see the desert above. Somewhere up there, in the sky he could not see, the alien ships were waiting. "I'm thinking about my farm in Montana," he said. "I've been saving money for 5 years to buy a little place with some land. I wanted to grow tomatoes and maybe raise a few chickens, live quietly, not bother anyone." He turned back to face his friends. But if I don't go up there, they'll just keep taking people. And eventually they'll take everyone. You can't be serious, Colonel Davis said. You're talking about sacrificing yourself. No, Jake said. I'm talking about going up there to find a way to stop them. Someone has to get inside that ship and learn how their technology works. Someone has to find their weaknesses. Lisa stood up. Jake, this is crazy. You're an engineer, not a spy or a soldier. Exactly, Jake said. I'm an engineer. I fix things that are broken, and right now the biggest broken thing is the relationship between humans and these aliens. Maybe I can fix that too. That night, Jake lay in his small bed in the bunker and thought about his decision. He had never wanted to be a hero. He had never wanted to leave Earth. All he had ever wanted was a simple life in a quiet place. But sometimes he realized the best way to protect the simple life you want is to make sure everyone else can have one too. The next morning, he would give Harvester Prime his answer. Jake Morrison wiped the sweat from his forehead as he stared at the computer screen. It was past midnight, and the Nevada desert outside the Deep Space Communications Array was silent except for the hum of the massive radio dishes. Most of his co-workers had gone home hours ago, but Jake stayed behind to finish checking the latest data from space. He was tired and wanted to go home to his small apartment. Tomorrow was Saturday, and he had planned to drive to his favorite fishing spot, near Lake Tahoe. Jake worked as an engineer for NASA, but his real dream was to save enough money to buy a small farm in Montana. He wanted to live quietly, grow vegetables, and maybe raise a few chickens. The busy life of a space engineer was not what he really wanted. The computer made a soft beeping sound. Jake looked at the screen and frowned. There was something strange in the radio signals they were receiving from deep space. Usually, the signals were just random noise from stars and planets far away. But this was different. These signals had a pattern. Jake adjusted his glasses and leaned closer to the screen. The pattern repeated every few seconds. It looked like math. Simple math at first, then more complex equations. His heart started beating faster. This was not natural. This was made by something intelligent. He picked up his phone and called his supervisor, Dr. Lisa Parker. She answered on the third ring, sounding sleepy. Lisa, you need to come to the lab right now, Jake said, trying to keep his voice calm. Jake, it's almost 1 in the morning. Can't this wait until Monday? No, it can't. I think we're receiving signals from aliens. There was silence on the other end of the phone. Then Lisa said, I'll be there in 20 minutes. Don't touch anything until I get there. While he waited for Lisa, Jake studied the signals more carefully. The math was getting more complex, but it was still math that humans could understand. Whoever was sending this wanted to make sure that anyone receiving it would know it came from intelligent beings. Lisa arrived with 2 cups of coffee and a worried expression on her face. She was a small woman with gray hair who had been studying space signals for 30 years. Jake had never seen her look so serious. Show me, she said. Jake pointed to the screen. It started about an hour ago. Look at this pattern. It's prime numbers first, then the Fibonacci sequence, then more advanced mathematics. This is definitely not natural. Lisa sat down and studied the data. After 10 minutes, she picked up her phone and made a call. Jake could only hear her side of the conversation, but it was clear she was talking to someone very important. Yes, sir. I'm sure. We need to contact the military immediately. For the next 2 hours, the small lab filled with people. Military officers, government officials, and scientists from all over the country arrived by helicopter and plane. Jake found himself in the middle of the biggest discovery in human history, and all he wanted was to go fishing. Colonel Ryan Davis, a tall man with short gray hair, took charge of the situation. He was polite but serious, and Jake could tell he was used to handling emergencies. Mr. Morrison, the colonel said, you discovered these signals. I need you to keep monitoring them, and tell us immediately if anything changes. Jake nodded and sat back down at his computer. The signals were getting stronger, much stronger, and they were coming from somewhere in the solar system, not from deep space. At exactly 4:17 in the morning, every computer screen in the lab went white. The radio dishes outside stopped moving. Even Jake's digital watch stopped working. Then, slowly, words appeared on every screen in perfect English. Greetings, inhabitants of the third planet. We are the Kethar. We have been observing your species for many cycles. You have been selected. Jake's hands shook as he read the words. Selected for what? He wondered. The message continued. We will arrive in your sky shortly. Do not attempt to resist. Resistance will only cause unnecessary suffering. Prepare your population for collection. Collection? Lisa whispered. What do they mean by collection? Before anyone could answer, the lights in the lab flickered. Outside, the desert night suddenly became as bright as day. Jake ran to the window and looked up at the sky. His mouth fell open. A massive ship hung in the sky above them. It was huge, bigger than any building Jake had ever seen. The ship was made of what looked like dark crystal, and red lights pulsed along its surface like a slow heartbeat. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. All around the world, similar ships appeared in the skies above major cities. The news channels that were still working showed the same scene everywhere. London, Tokyo, New York, Moscow, giant alien ships hovering silently above the Earth. Jake's phone buzzed with a text message from his sister in Denver. Jake, there's a huge alien ship over the city. I'm scared. Are you safe? Before he could reply, the alien message appeared on the screens again. This time, it was different. We are peaceful beings. We do not wish to harm you. However, your species has reached the point where collection is necessary. We have done this many times before with many species. You will be taken to worlds where you can serve a greater purpose. Colonel Davis was shouting orders into his radio, but Jake could barely hear him. He was thinking about his sister in Denver, about his plans for a quiet farm in Montana, about the fishing trip he would never take. The alien ship above them pulsed brighter, and smaller ships began to separate from it like seeds falling from a tree. These smaller ships were heading toward the ground. They're landing, someone shouted. Jake looked around the lab at all the important people who were supposed to know what to do in situations like this. But no one looked like they knew what to do. They all looked as scared and confused as he felt. The computer screens flickered again, and a new message appeared. This one made Jake's blood run cold. We require the human designated as Jake Morrison to report to the nearest collection point. He has been specifically selected for his problem-solving capabilities. Compliance will ensure the safety of his immediate family members. Everyone in the lab turned to look at Jake. He felt his legs go weak, and he had to sit down. How do they know my name? He whispered. Colonel Davis put a hand on Jake's shoulder. We're not going to let them take you, son. We'll figure this out. But Jake was already thinking. If these aliens knew his name, they had been watching Earth for a long time. They knew things about humans that humans didn't even know about themselves, and they wanted him specifically. Outside, the smaller alien ships were landing in the desert. Jake could see strange lights moving toward the building. Whatever was going to happen next, he knew his quiet life was over forever.